Turning to our developing story from Russia and to the latest breaking news, the Wagner Group have claimed in a Telegram post the organisation has taken control of all military sites in Rostov-on-Don in the southern parts of Russia. Well, joining me live is Dr. Malcolm Davis, Senior Analyst for Defence and Strategy and Capability at ASPI. Thank you very much, Doctor, for joining us. So firstly, can you just give us an update of what's happening?
Well, as you say, you've now got Prigozhin in Rostov-on-Don talking to the deputy commander there and basically in charge. The Prigozhin's Wagner Group now control Rostov-on-Don. Oh, sorry, phone call. So you've now got Rostov-on-Don under the control of the Wagner Group. The question is, what happens next? Will they take this further? They're already fighting in the next town up, Wagner, and then the town after that, the city after that, of course, is Moscow. So the question in my mind is, does Prigozhin have support in Moscow that is opening the path for him to move forward onto Moscow? That's the key question.
All right, and what about Russia with nuclear weapons? And if we're talking about civil war, which we've heard, those words the last couple of hours, what are your thoughts on that and who has control of these nuclear weapons?
Well, that's a key question. I mean, the concern has to be the tactical nuclear weapons, not strategic nuclear forces such as ICBMs or anything like that. It's the sort of low-yield weapons that are forward deployed in weapons bunkers. There was a recent move by the Russians to deploy tactical nuclear weapons into Belarus, but we're talking about tactical nuclear weapons that are still based in Russia, in that area of Rostov-on-Don. Who has control of them? What are their control systems to prevent unauthorized use, what's known as permissive action links? What are they like? Can they be bypassed? I think that this will be the key issue that most Western governments are going to be very focused on, is how to avoid these nuclear weapons coming into the possession of forces that could then sell them off, in effect, to the highest bidder. And you think about the possibility of a country like Iran seeking to grab a few. So control of nuclear weapons is really a critical issue.
And regarding this situation, Doctor, when was the last time that you saw a situation as serious as this?
I've never seen a situation as serious like this. We have a situation potentially where an insurrection that is now underway could turn into a civil war or a military coup in a nuclear weapons state. This is a very serious situation that will unfold over coming hours and days, potentially even weeks. If Prigozhin's forces advance on Moscow, you could have the potential for fighting in the streets of Moscow. Where is President Putin? What is his current condition? And will we see some sort of palace coup occur that could see Putin removed and someone else, not necessarily Prigozhin, but someone else, be put into the Kremlin who we simply don't know anything about? So this is probably one of the most serious and rapid developing crises that certainly has occurred in many recent years.
And with that breaking news that we've just spoken about, the message from Telegram, how reliable do you think that kind of communication is?
Look, I think it's likely. I mean, we're seeing video footage of Prigozhin in Rostov-on-Don, so he seems to be quite calm and collected. I think that the question then is, where does he go from there? As I said, Moscow is not that far away from Rostov-on-Don. I believe it's about a 15-hour drive. So that's comparable to Canberra to the Gold Coast, for example. That's not a long way to go for a military column that potentially could then see us in a situation later this week whereby potentially you could see fighting in the streets of Moscow between opposing forces.
So you don't think it's a case of perhaps Prigozhin just trying to push Shoigu out in line for that?
Well, clearly his insurrection is aimed at the Russian military command, in other words, Shoigu and Gerasimov. But in removing them, he also weakens Putin, particularly if the Ukrainians then exploit any redeployment of Russian forces away from the defensive line in Ukraine to fight Wagner. So it's possible that with Putin weakened and with potential insurrection turning into civil war or some sort of coup situation. It's a very serious scenario indeed. And as I said, there's that whole nuclear dimension that I think everyone is quietly worried about. We're not trying to sort of sow panic, but we can't ignore that dimension. Russia is a nuclear weapon state. We now have a situation whereby we're facing certainly insurrection, potentially civil war in a nuclear weapon state. That's serious.
And Doctor, do you have any idea if it was to turn into a civil war, any idea on a timeline as to when it would be declared a civil war, and what would that mean for Ukraine and Australia and the rest of the world?
Oh, look, I think that we're not there yet. I think that it becomes a civil war if there's large-scale fighting between opposing forces. Then you talk civil war. That's probably days, if not weeks away, depending on what happens with, in terms of Prigozhin's ability to gain leverage with certain bodies within Moscow. Does he already have some sort of influence? Has he greased the wheels, shall we say, to allow him greater access? If he is going to meet resistance, he's going to meet it along that road between Rostov-on-Don and Moscow. And if it does turn out to be serious resistance, then we are talking civil war. If he doesn't meet resistance, if he basically gets the road open to him relatively clearly, then I think that you're talking a potential, certainly for a coup against the Russian military leadership, but then that does, as I said, raise into question Putin's ability to hang on to power.
All right, we have to wrap it up there, but Dr. Malcolm Davis, thank you very much for your time and expertise.
Thank you very much.